was the one who suggested therapy, which is funny if you think about it. The people who still believe usually ask for miracles. I asked for a room with fluorescent lighting, 2 identical armchairs, and a woman with a legal pad. My wife said yes too easily, like someone who knows the ending of a movie and wants to watch me guess it wrong. We met on a drizzly Thursday at 6:30 p.m., that dead hour when the city smells like wet brakes and tired food. She called it a mistake with a coworker before we sat down. She said it the way a person says they dented a bumper in the parking lot. I could live with a dent, I thought. I could pay for paint. I could be practical about love. The therapist, a calm woman with blue frames and a soft voice, asked us to say our names even though she already had them on a clipboard. My wife said hers too brightly. I said mine like I was giving it to a cop. Then the therapist asked what we wanted, and my wife said forgiveness, and I said a path. That should have been a sign, 2 different words stepping off 2 different curbs. The first 20 seconds are the part you remember. They're the ones people replay on walks, at stoplights, in the grocery store, when the freezer section hits their face like winter. I promised myself to listen. Then my wife took a breath and said, I made a mistake with a coworker, and the room didn't collapse, which I took as proof I was stronger than I felt. She kept going like she practiced. It was last fall. They stayed late one night after a systems migration. There was wine at the holiday party. I nodded until my neck felt mechanical. The therapist asked what boundaries we could build. We talked in Lego words: honesty, accountability, no contact. We made a little fence around something we hadn't measured yet. The first session ended with homework. She would write an honest timeline. I would write what I needed to feel safe. I walked out holding a paper with my own handwriting that said, space, clarity, no more lies. The word clarity stared back at me like a dare. When we got home, she showered and said she was freezing. I went into the closet and noticed the imprint where her ring used to live on a velvet pad. She said she had taken it off for the gym and forgot. The gym closed 6 hours earlier. I didn't say that aloud. I wrote it in my head and carried it to the next week like a burnt match. We went back. We sat. I offered my paper, she offered hers. It started with, met him at orientation, which wasn't the holiday party or a systems migration. It moved through months like someone counting change, lunch, project, hotel at a conference. My chest did something I'm not sure I can name, a soundless cough of blood. The therapist asked my wife to pause and look at me. I forgave the coworker mistake, I said. I can't forgive arithmetic. I'm telling you the truth, she answered. You're telling me a version that feels safer to say, I said. That's not the same thing. The therapist told us about shame and disclosure windows. I wanted to ask if there was a chart for this, a graph that went from one night to never mind all of it. Instead, I asked the question I'd circled since we left the closet. Why is your ring box empty? My wife rubbed her finger, a ghost of gold. It's at the jeweler, she said, resizing. You've had that ring for 7 years, I said. What changed? She looked past me, and something in her went rigid, like a door wedged against a chair. The therapist said my wife's name gently. That's when the script broke. My wife's face flickered, like a bad connection. It wasn't a coworker, she said. She said it fast, as if speed could keep the words from landing. It was my ex. The room snapped to a sharper focus, like I'd just gotten new glasses. I didn't move. Outside, traffic hissed by like a tired snake. The therapist said nothing, which is the same as making room for a fire to burn. For how long? I asked. 2 words. 10,000 pounds. She stared at her hands. 2 years. I didn't shout. I didn't flip a table. I didn't ask her how many times or what hotels or what songs were playing because somewhere a man on the internet had warned me you can drown in details. I looked at the therapist, who seemed to shrink under the weight of my quiet. I'm not your priest, I said to my wife. I'm the person you broke. She started crying. It didn't pull me forward. I wasn't unkind. I just sat there and watched something end. The therapist asked what I needed. I said, I need to go home and pack a bag. My wife reached for my sleeve and said, please don't, and I moved my arm in a small way that felt like saving my life. When I got home, I folded shirts with the same precision I used to reserve for Christmas lights. I pulled my passport from the drawer like it was a piece of me I'd forgotten belonged only to me. She followed me from room to room, whispering sorry like it was a spell. The hallway looked longer than it ever had. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere quiet, I said. I can't hear myself think in this house. You don't have to leave, she said. We can work through it. That's why we have therapy. That's what couples do. I shook my head. Couples do therapy because they both want to build. You did demolition for 2 years and told me it was a loose tile. She leaned against the doorway and slid down it, a slow collapse. I took my bag and walked out into the drizzle. It felt like I was stepping off a porch and finding solid ground where I expected stairs. I slept on my friend Marcus's couch for a week. He has one of those big, forgiving couches that eats you and lets you breathe at the same time. We watched baseball with the sound off and let the captions do the talking. On the third night, he asked me if I wanted a beer. I said yes. He asked if I wanted to tell it. I nodded. Then I didn't say anything for a minute because my throat was a locked drawer. When I finally spoke, it was like breaking ice with a boot heel. She said, coworker, I told him. Then therapy turned coworker into X. 2 years. Jesus, he said softly. I think the part that hurts, I said, is how efficiently she managed the story. She's been doing an edit in real time. He didn't give me a TED talk about moving on. He didn't say we all make mistakes. He handed me another beer and said, man, I'm sorry, and the plainness of that was like a warm hand on my shoulder. I found a short-term rental near the river. The place had a balcony with a hard chair and a view of a brick wall that turned orange at sunset. I kept a small routine, showers that lasted exactly the length of one song, eggs at 7, a walk to the coffee shop where the barista learned my name and asked me about the weather like it was a personality test. I started sleeping more. I started dreaming less. I looked for a lawyer. The lawyer had a tidy office and a fountain pen he treated like a pet. He went through the options. He asked about property, accounts, her retirement contributions, my car. He asked whether we had children, and when I said no, he said, it will be easier, and I believed him, the way you believe a weatherman who points to a cloud and calls it a system. When I told my wife I would be filing, she asked to meet. We chose a diner where the coffee is always either too hot or too cold. She wore her ring. It sat on her hand like a prop, and I stared because I am a simple man who needed to watch the theater one more time. I took it to be cleaned, she said, catching my eyes. I wanted to feel married. You didn't want to feel married for 2 years, I said. It came out calm, like water over stone. I know, she said. I'm sorry. She held the apology up between us like an umbrella with holes. I'm waiving my claim to the condo, I said. Her head jerked like I'd tossed her a snake. And the car is in your name anyway. You keep it. Why? She asked, wary, as if there were barbs hidden in the words. Because I don't want to spend another minute of my life untangling a mess you made, I said. I want clean lines. I want to leave with my things and what's left of my peace. She opened her mouth and closed it. I don't want you to hate me, she said. I don't, I answered, and heard how true it was. I just don't want you. She started crying again, tears slipping down the side of her nose. The waitress came and refilled my coffee and set down a napkin and looked at me like it wasn't the first time she'd done that for a man whose life had a crack down the middle. We signed things. We returned things. She took the framed photos. I took the albums because a person should have their history, even if it hurts to look in the mirror. The lawyer sent me a PDF with the word decree in the subject line. The night I got it, I put on my jacket and stood on the balcony, watching the brick wall turn orange, then brown, then ordinary. I slept for 9 hours and woke up feeling like my bones were mine. Time is stubborn. It doesn't care if you are wounded or wise. It keeps its pace and dares you to keep yours. I learned where the hands go when they are not holding a familiar shape. I put them on a wheel. I put them on a pull-up bar. I put them in soil and grew basil on my balcony like a tiny flag. I didn't check on her. I didn't lurk where the photos live or call her sister or ask mutual friends to interpret the smoke signals of her life. If news arrived, it came the way weather comes through old windows, thin and cold and not invited. It was Marcus who told me about the job. We were at a minor league game watching boys try to turn into men in front of 1,200 people and a dog in a jersey. He glanced at his phone and made a face. "You want to know or no?" he asked. I looked at the white chalk lines and thought about white lies and said, "Tell me." He read, "Apparently HR let her go. Violation of policy regarding relationships in supervisory chains." I inhaled. The air smelled like cut grass and cheap mustard. A kid missed a fly ball by a whisper and slammed his mitt into his thigh. The crowd groaned like one large animal. "Was he her supervisor?" I asked. "Seems like it," Marcus said. "Or maybe it's messier. The email got forwarded around by someone who capitalized the wrong word. Anyway, it's done." I nodded. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the cartoon version of karma. I felt the way you feel when the ocean finally brings back a shoe. "This is yours," it says. That's all. 2 months later, she texted that she had to move. The building's owner was raising rents. She asked if I still had the spare key to the storage unit and if I'd be willing to meet her there so she could get her boxes. I did. I was. We met at noon in the heat that makes the asphalt smell like the inside of a new basketball. She arrived late, in a car I didn't recognize. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes were tired in a way I recognized and didn't miss. We opened the unit and found a stack of our old life, a lamp we'd fought over at a yard sale, a blender we never used, a set of plates that had made us feel like adults the day we bought them. "Do you want any of this?" she asked, waving a hand. "I want my cookbooks," I said, "and the shoebox with ticket stubs." "Why?" she asked. "I thought you didn't want, memories." "I want to remember I was a person who loved," I said. "That part is mine, not yours." She nodded. We loaded her car. At one point, she lifted the lamp and held it like an infant. "I'm sorry," she said again. I didn't answer. Not cruelly, just nothing left to spend. After that, nothing. Whole weeks like clean sheets. I drank coffee with a woman from the plant nursery who taught me the difference between a plant that wants to live and one that wants to be admired. We never touched. We might. I didn't hurry. A year passed. The calendar said it out loud even when I didn't. The city kept being itself. Buses sighing, dogs deciding where to stop, that crosswalk near the bakery that plays a little song when you push the button. I had a job I did well, and a boss who said thank you like he meant it. I had a small life that fit like a shirt that had finally stretched in all the right places. Then a message slid into my phone on a Tuesday at 4:11 p.m. The hour when most offices smell like desperation and hand sanitizer. It was from her. I read it twice before it made sense in the particular way bad news makes sense, like finding a crack in a glass you're already holding. She wrote that she was sorry again, which felt like a record stuck on a word. She wrote that the man she'd called love had left when the condo sold and the severance dried up. She wrote that she was renting a room near the freeway from a woman who ran a dessert business. She said she heard trucks at night and couldn't sleep. She said she regretted everything, capital E, and didn't know how to put herself back. I stared at the screen until the letters felt like ants. Then I set the phone down like it weighed something. I walked around my apartment and touched the back of a chair and the handle of a drawer. I made coffee at an hour when coffee means you want to stay in your own head a little longer. Marcus called before I could decide whether to write back. You okay? He asked. I got a message, I said. From the ghost, he said. She says she's sorry, I said. Of course she does. She says she lives in a rented room. She says he's gone. She says she can't sleep. Marcus waited. On the field of my silence, the question grew large and obvious. What do you want to do? I poured the coffee. I took a sip. It was too strong and exactly what I wanted. I want to be done, I said. I think I am. Then be done, he said. I picked up the phone. I wrote one sentence. I deleted it. I wrote another. I deleted that too. When the words finally arrived, they came as if they'd been waiting in another room. I'm not angry, I typed. I hope you find your footing. Take care. I put the phone down again. I watched the wall change color. A crow landed on the fire escape and yelled because that's what crows do. I laughed, just once, out loud in an empty room. Not mean, not triumphant. It was the sound a person makes when the weight shifts off the wrong side of the scale. That night, I walked to the river. The city lights made a gold path on the water like a promise you can only believe if you don't look too hard at how it's made. I leaned on the rail and let the metal push a crease into my shirt. I thought about therapy rooms and ring boxes and how quiet the house was the day I left. I thought about how mercy can be a clean exit and how justice can arrive without a soundtrack. A couple walked past holding hands. The man was saying something earnest, with his chin tucked, and the woman was listening like it mattered. I hoped they were good to each other. I hoped they understood fences and gardens and the trick of watering what you plant. At home, I opened the shoebox with the ticket stubs. I held one from a movie we'd seen our first winter, a forgettable thriller where the hero does the improbable thing and nobody believes him until they do. The paper was thin. My name is still my name, I thought. The past is not a curse. It's a map with some roads closed and a few dirt paths that led somewhere beautiful anyway. I slept and dreamt of a door I didn't have to hold shut with my body. In the morning, I made eggs and oversalted them and didn't care. The sun landed on the basil like applause. My phone sat silent on the counter, a small, obedient rectangle. When I finally picked it up, there was only a weather alert about wind and a coupon for tires. For a second, I felt strangely grateful to be the kind of person who needed neither of those things urgently. I went out into the day. I answered emails. I watered the basil. I walked to the coffee shop where the barista knew my name. When she asked how I was, I told her the truth most people won't believe unless they see your face. Light, I said. I feel light. She smiled like she'd been waiting to hear it. She slid my coffee across the counter and said, "That looks good on you." On Sunday, I cooked too much food and brought half of it to Marcus's place because he has a way of being alone that never feels lonely. We ate and watched part of a game and talked about nothing that would matter in a court of law. He told me a story about a kid on his block who started a lawn business with a broken mower, and I told him about the crow and he laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. "Does it feel like justice?" he asked finally. Not the kind that ends in handcuffs, the other kind. "It feels like gravity that finally remembered me," I said. "Like a balance you don't have to argue with." He nodded. "That's the only kind worth waiting for." On my walk home, the sky was the particular color it gets before rain, the kind that asks for your attention but not your fear. I passed a woman waiting for a bus with 2 grocery bags, standing like a person who has a plan and a schedule and a stove that works. A boy rolled by on a skateboard and laughed as if nothing bad had ever happened to anyone. I didn't resent either of them. I let their lives move past me like weather. I know the story most people want, the one with a door slammed or a speech that turns blood into applause. I don't have that. What I have is the quiet arithmetic of leaving, the geometry of space reclaimed, the soft physics of sleep returning for good. What I have is a line I drew around myself and kept, even when it looked like a small circle. It's been a year since I sat in a room with fluorescent lighting and believed we could build a fence tall enough to keep a secret out. The lesson is simpler than that. You can't build a fence on a sinkhole. You can only step away and find a field that holds. She wrote again once, a short message on a Sunday. I'm sorry. I wish I had been different. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I am busy living. I made a sandwich and watered the basil and called my mom and cleaned the stovetop and fell asleep on my couch with the game on mute. Somewhere, a truck rolled past a rented room. Somewhere else, my crow yelled at a sky that didn't owe him anything. Everything felt exactly where it belonged. I used to think justice required volume, that you had to raise your voice until the world turned its head. Now I know better. Justice doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need the lights. It doesn't even need me to witness it, though sometimes it's kind and lets me watch. It comes when it's ready, the same way morning comes to a room with thin curtains. Quiet, inevitable, unafraid. I smiled the first time I said that out loud. Not out of spite, out of relief. The kind that loosens your shoulders and unclenches your jaw and lets you forget the shape of your old life. The kind that feels like the world handing you back your name without making you beg for it. I walked to the river again that night, and the lights did their trick, laying gold over water, turning something as ordinary as current into a path. I thought about the message I didn't send. I thought about the apology I didn't accept. I thought about eggs and basil and crows and how small a good life can be without being a punishment. Then I turned around and went home. Two questions stayed with me as I brushed my teeth and set my alarm. Where do you draw your lines when the person you love erases them? And when the quiet kind of justice finally arrives, do you let it do its work without calling everyone to see? If you want more stories like this, stick around, leave a comment, and subscribe.